Hey guys, it's Debbie. Welcome to my channel. I didn't realize, but there was a preliminary hearing on one of the cases that we are following on Friday, and I just realized today that we missed it. So we are going to watch it. It is, I forgot his name again. I did the same thing the last time. Brandon Barnes, I think his name is. It's on the thumbnail. It's the same thing I said last time. Brandon Barnes. Hey, Nancy. Brandon Barnes, Kendall Mims, and Victoria Tippett. These three lived together along with Brandon's wife, whose name I have also forgotten. Um, Darn it. You guys, hey, Charms, welcome. You guys, I am really bad with details. Shameful. I should at least know the name of the victim, right? When we did this was a case I knew nothing about, and I thought that we were just gonna do like this. It was a bond hearing, and I was like, this is just an interesting kind of a bizarre thing, and I was just going to watch it on my own, and I was like, no, I have got to share this cuz this is bizarre. So, Brandon Barnes, his co-defendants are Victoria Tippett and Kendall Mims, and he unalived his wife Jessica. Now, hey Jessica's. Um, he was living with Kendall before he met Jessica, and they had a child together. They were not married. Hey, Lori. Oh, I'm sorry. How are you feeling, sweetie? So they lived together and they had a child together. And then he met Jessica. He told Jessica that the woman that lived with him was his sister and that the child was his niece. They had gone to get a marriage license. I don't know if they had ever gotten married. They went to the courthouse and got the license. I don't know if they actually went to the courthouse and got married or if they just had the license. But then he met Jessica and they actually did get married. So they call both of these women his wife. Obviously, he's only married to one of them legally. I'm under the impression that it was Jessica. So, at some point in this relationship, either he comes out and tells her the truth that this is not his niece, this is his child, or she finds out on her own. During all of this, and I'm not sure of the time period, I'm not good with minute details, y'all. I'm very sorry. Um, I'm not sure of the time span. Like I said, I thought this was going to be like we were going to watch this bond hearing of this scandalous thing. And also, if you guys go back and watch it, it was a couple months ago. I did a live on it. Um, and it was like, it wasn't the whole hearing. It was a court TV, like where they have talking heads and they pop in and out. And so I was like just fast forwarding it to the hearing parts. Her attorney was so creepy. She was like touching on her and rubbing her back, and it was weird. And I just was like, I did it for the creep factor. Like, I was like, you guys have got to see this. I didn't know we were going to be able to like really follow this case. I didn't even know they were doing this hearing. This is the probable cause hearing. So, in the span of time, which, like I said, I don't remember what the span of time is, um, they get another roommate, another girl. So now Brandon is now living with three women. So guess what Brandon did? He slept with the third girl. And Jessica walked in on them. So, hey, mama. So, Brandon decided that Jessica had to go, and he got Victoria and I forgot the other one's name, Kendall, to help him. So they are charged three charges. And I don't remember what they are, but we'll see them in the hearing. Um he Brandon, they all three of them have been denied bond, so they've been in jail this whole time. And um Brandon waived his right to a preliminary hearing. So we're only going to see Victoria and Kendall in this. So, and that's pretty much all that I know. I know that I can't remember if they burnt her. I think they I think they burnt her. Like I said, I'm so bad with details. And I didn't do any notes, any research, because I thought it was just like we were gonna get like one little glimpse of it, and we were, like I did it, like I said, I did it for like the creep factor, and I thought that was it. But apparently, Court TV is gonna follow this one, so we might even maybe get to see it go to trial, which would be great. I would love to see it go to trial. And to me, these are kids. They're like 20 years old, and they've ruined their life over stupidity. I mean, they're 20. Like, they should be getting ready to go to college and trying to figure out what they want to do with their life and not doing this. I don't know what the sound is like either, guys. So I know, they're kids. Is adorable. Red hair.
Yeah, I was here. I didn't know.
The redhead is the one that they killed, and that's the husband. And then the two in the smaller pictures are the other two. The one at the top, that's the other wife. So the one on the right lost my. I'm trying to see what you see so I can tell. Can you guys see my cursor when I go over the? Nope. I guess you can't. Okay. So the girl on the right with the long hair, the long reddish blonde hair. Oh, the hearing's about a couple hours, Mama. Um, the one with the long reddish hair is the one that died, and then the guy, of course, is the husband, and the girl at the top is the wife, the one with the baby, and then the one on the bottom is the roommate. Okay.
Judge, can we approach it? That's right. Yeah.
Actually, it's not even 2 hours because after I fast forward through all this stuff, it won't be 2 hours.
We'll cover arrest warrant ending in 1936, 1937, 1938 on misprision of a felony and obstructing justice, and the next defendant, Kendall Mims, on arrest warrant 1933, 1934, 1935 on the subsequent charges of accessory after fact to felony ABHC murder, misprision of a felony, and obstructing justice. I see that, is everyone agreeing to hold these preliminary examinations at the same time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Both parties with attorneys for the defendants, and I don't think there's any objection from the solicitor's office.
No, sir, Your Honor.
I always say this, on cases such as these, I realize that these cases can be emotional, and I accept that fact. I know there may be victims, families in the courtroom. Please understand that my first priority is to protect the process and to protect the decorum in the courtroom. So if there's any emotional outburst, I will remove you and or clear the courtroom for just the parties to be here. But I always say that just as a warning. So do we have any objection to waiving the reading of the warrants?
None from defense, Your Honor.
None from, all right. Solicitor, if you would call your first client.
Yes, sir, Judge. State called Steve Westcott.
Okay, Officer Westcott, if you would approach the stand, be prepared to be sworn. And if you would raise your right hand and be prepared to be sworn, do you swear and affirm that testimony about you is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, please answer any questions that the solicitor has.
Officer Westcott, can you state your full name and your position with the Pendleton PD for the court?
Officer Stephen Westcott, I'm patrolman with Pendleton Police Department.
And all the parties are aware of this, but just for the court's knowledge, you are not the applicant on these warrants, but you are the chief investigative officer, lead investigator in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did the offenses that led to these warrants relate to Ms. Mims and Ms. Tippett? For Ms. Mims, the warrant ending in 933, 934, and 935, and the warrant ending in 936, 937, and 938 relating to Ms. Tippett. Did those offenses happen in Anderson County and more specifically within the city of Pendleton?
Yes, sir.
This case has a lot of background, but can you tell the court how you established probable cause for these warrants and how your investigators and officers in this case established probable cause?
Yes, sir. I'm going to go back to an incident, which was not this incident. On July 31st, myself and Officer Bishop went to Jessica Barnes' mother's residence at 456 Jackson Street on a civil disturbance. At the end of it, Jessica Barnes was transported via ambulance to the admin hospital. Separating from that, on the 10th of September, Ms. Marmara, Jessica's mother, came into the office to report her daughter as missing. So about a month and a half it transpired.
So this case started out as a missing person case, correct?
Yes, sir, on the 10th of September.
And just for the court, for the record, the underlying felony that took place was a murder, correct?
Correct.
And who's the defendant charged with murder?
Brandon Barnes,
Okay.
Jessica's up.
All right, now let's, from the date of the murder, what's the date of the murder?
They're determined that to be the 1st of August.
Okay, August 1st or August 2nd, somewhere in that time frame. Can you just tell the court now relating to obstruction, accessory after the fact, and misprision of felony, what these defendants and what their activity was to lead to those warrants from August 1st or 2nd until the time they were actually arrested?
On the 10th of September, after Ms. Marmara had reported her daughter missing to us, we went to the address at 102 Laurel Drive and made contact with Brandon Barnes, Victoria Tippett, and Kendall Mims at the pool house located at that address. Again, the initial investigation was speaking with the three of them concerning the report of a missing person for Jessica Barnes. The answers that we were given that date, one of which was a written voluntary statement from Victoria Tippett, were that Victoria said she was the last person to have seen Jessica Barnes on 31 July, is what she wrote on her written statement, that she had come to the pool house, walked to the pool house. Victoria said that she had been outside walking, holding Valentina, the baby of Kendall, when she saw Jessica.
Oh yeah, the one thing I forgot to mention, they all lived in a pool house. I don't know who owned the actual house, and their grandfather, one of their grandfathers, lived in the pool house with them. So that's a small house to have 5 people and a baby.
Go to the pool house. Victoria went in the pool house, still holding Valentina. He said that there was a conversation with Jessica, asked her what she was doing. She said she was packing some belongings from Michigan, but she wouldn't give any further information. Victoria then said that Jessica then left, and that was the last she had seen.
Judge, may I check for just a minute? May we approach that?
people that didn't hear at the beginning, Jessica is deceased. She was married to and baby mama and
Has already said.
Yes, sir, twice.
Officer Westcott, can you, when we refer to the minor child, can we just refer to them as the minor child?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And you can keep going forward.
oh, that was it? Okay.
So you were at the point where Ms. Tippett had given y'all a voluntary statement.
After we got the voluntary statement from Ms. Tippett, it was verbal from Ms. Mims.
Hold on, is this being delayed or is this live?
I don't think it's going out live.
Okay, so, any mention of any minor thing could be good action.
I'll let him know.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Victoria was the only one who gave us a written statement. It was a verbal interview with Ms. Mims and Mr. Barnes. Mr. Barnes said that Jessica previously has left for extended periods of time, so he wasn't concerned about her being gone at this point. Ms. Mims had very little to say. It's very deferential toward Mr. Barnes. After we got a written statement, that concluded the missing persons investigation. We had very little at that point. Investigation continued over the following days. We got information from Ronald Herron that he had tracking devices personally that he had put on vehicles that were registered to Brandon Barnes.
Can I stop you for just a second? Can you tell the court who Ronald Herron is?
He is the grandfather of Kendall Mims.
Okay,
He's
and
the property owner of 102.
Oh, I was wrong.
what's the relationship between 102 Laurel, where all of the defendants live in there, correct?
Yes, sir. And so 102 Laurel has a main house on it, which is where Mr. Herron resides, and there's a pool house on the property as well, which is where Barnes, Mims, Tippett, and Minor Child will reside.
All right, let's go back to those trackers. Mr. Herron had trackers on these vehicles?
On the Chevy HHR registered to Brandon Barnes and a Kia registered, I believe it was in Mr. Herron's name, but it was used by Kendall Mims.
And just for the court's knowledge, those trackers were on these vehicles prior to law enforcement ever being involved in this case.
Yes, sir. Law enforcement had nothing to do with the trackers.
Why did he put the trackers on the vehicles?
What he told us was that because he had a financial interest in them, he was the lien holder, paid for the vehicles. And there was some type of issue from Mr. Barnes' previous relationship that he didn't feel safe with Kendall. And there was some other incident that we were not involved in, so he put the trackers on these two vehicles.
Okay, I'm gonna jump a little bit. So eventually Mrs. Barnes's body, it goes from a missing person case to a murder, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how did y'all discover that?
Based on the tracker information from these vehicles, we were able to learn that the vehicles, particularly the HHR, had made multiple trips from the Laurel Drive address out to a location on Twin Lakes Drive, which is in Pickens County. And at this particular location, there's a pathway which leads down to Lake Hartwell, some type of quarry. And where we found there were multiple trips for extended periods, starting on August 1st to I believe August 4th or 5th, where the vehicle's out there for, anywhere from a half an hour to, more than 2 hours at a time. And then the vehicle would return to Laurel Drive and then go back to this particular location on Twin Lakes Road. So with that information, seeing it, there's no activity on Jessica Barnes' social media accounts, no activity on various cell phones. Mother, with the initial report being she hadn't heard from her daughter in over a month, and had received no phone calls, no text messages. From that information, we put together a plan to go search the location using various resources, including a canine cadaver dog, which is not law enforcement, it is a private entity. We did that on September 19th, out at the location around where the tractor indicated to be located for extended periods. During the course of this search, we had multiple search teams in a number of locations. Officer Bishop and an officer from Clemson University found a location which indicated something had been burned off of the trail. Would have been no more than a quarter mile, I'm thinking, from the parking area where the HHR had been repeatedly. I was with the canine cadaver dog, made our way over to that location, and the cadaver dog made an indication that there were human remains there. A coroner, Candy Kelly from Pickens County, was contacted. She came to the scene. She indicated that there seemed to be human remains. A Clemson University professor, Weisensee, also an anthropologist, came out to the scene. She searched through the burned pile, and she said that yes, there were human remains in this pile. So from that point, the scene was secured. It was getting later in the afternoon. Pickens County stayed on the scene. SLED, who was also involved in this search, they came out on the following day, on the 20th.
I'm gonna stop you right there. Can you just, whose human remains did those end up being?
Ultimately, they were the dental remains which were found in the pile. There were 3 teeth and a piece of a jawbone. It was determined to be the remains of Jessica Barnes.
And that there's limited remains just from them being burned, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Were there any other remains found in any other locations?
Yes, sir. Following the search on the 20th, ultimately there was a search warrant conducted following interview with the 3 suspects on the 1st of October when they were ultimately arrested. And during their interviews, Victoria Tippett had said that there was a bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket that was out at the property at 102 Laurel Drive, which also contained some of Jessica Barnes' remains.
I want to thank you for that. I want to jump now to, we know that there was a murder that took place. Can you tell the court how Ms. Tippett and Ms. Mims either learned of the murder, had knowledge of the murder, who was there, who wasn't there, that sort of thing?
Yes, sir. So when the murder took place in the residence, Victoria Tippett was there with the minor child when the murder took place by Brandon Barnes.
And what was the manner of death? How was she killed?
She was choked to death.
And how did you learn of that?
Ultimately, it was through the interviews.
Okay, so basically the defendants confessed to her being strangled.
Yes, sir, on 1 October. There were a number of interviews prior to that where they had ample opportunity to tell us what had taken place, and they had never confessed to what had happened.
Okay. And now I just want to be clear on who was present when the murder took place.
Brandon Barnes strangled Jessica Barnes. Victoria Tippett was present with the minor child.
So Ms. Tippett's knowledge of the murder was that she witnessed the murder.
Basically, she was in the room when it took place.
And where was Ms. Mims at the time of the murder?
She was at work.
Okay. So she wasn't on location when
She
the
was
murder took
not
place.
present when the murder took place.
Okay. Now I want you to tell the court a little bit about how Ms. Mims came to learn of the murder.
It was determined that she was told what had happened when she came home from work, and at this point, Jessica Barnes' remains had already been placed into a large Rubbermaid type tote that was purchased by Brandon Barnes and Victoria Tippett using Kendall Mims' debit card at the Central Walmart.
And so her body was in a plastic tote, is that what?
Yes, sir.
And when was the tote that the body went into purchased, before or after the murder?
After the murder.
Okay. And how did y'all come to find out that they had purchased it at Walmart?
Sledge agent Kevin Tyner had found that there was audit or video surveillance of the purchase.
Because Walmart has the murder aisle that everybody goes to after they commit murder. That's where you get your cleaning supplies and your plastic bags and your plastic totes. Everybody knows that. Walmart has the murder aisle.
At the Walmart, and you could see Brandon Barnes and Victoria Tippett walking out of the Walmart with a tote and a shovel that they had purchased on top of it. So,
And that was prior to Kendall Mims having knowledge that this murder had taken place, correct?
at the time the tote was purchased, yes.
What, she hadn't returned home from work at that time when they had purchased the tote, correct?
That I'm not sure of.
Okay. But ultimately, Kendall came home from work.
Correct.
And how did she learn of the murder?
She was told by Brandon
Okay.
Barnes and Victoria Tippett what had taken place.
Okay. All right. Now that they all know that this incident has taken place, walk the court through their actions from, the time the murder took place until you've already testified that her body eventually being burned. Tell the court a little bit about how they got from the pool house with the body to the Twin Lakes Road location.
So Mr. Heron also has a ring camera system at his residence. You can, at some point, you can see the tote being brought out of the pool house by Brandon Barnes with the assistance of Ms. Mims and Victoria Tippett due to it, the dead weight of the body being in the tote. It's put in the HHR. Again, it's driven around. Apparently, what they told us was they were searching for a location to dispose of the remains before they ultimately ended at the location on Twin Lakes Road in Pickens County.
And did the tracking devices show y'all them driving around?
Yes, sir.
But they also, in their statements and interviews, explain this process.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's tell the court how they eventually picked Twin Lakes Road.
From what Brandon Barnes had said, it was a location, well, they had checked a location in Georgia and determined that it wasn't a good location for whatever their reasoning was. Ended up at the Twin Lakes location, according to Mr. Barnes, it was the first place Jessica Barnes had gone on a date. So it had some kind of sentimental value to him. They tried to dig using the shovel they had purchased at Walmart. Then we were able to find that spot where they had tried to dig on the trail before determining that they couldn't dig or get through the hard packed dirt. At which point they made the determination to burn the remains. And while this was taking place, and again, it was a number of trips that they made out there. We have text messages between Victoria Mims and Victoria Tippett and Kendall Mims, that Kendall Mims was out at the roadway keeping watch while Victoria Tippett and Brandon Barnes were at the remains site attempting to dispose of the body.
And did they? So all three of the co-defendants were at the Twin Lakes Road location.
Yes, sir.
Was there any other time that they were at the Twin Lakes Road location that you know of?
Multiple times. I roughly 10 times between the time of the murder and when we discovered it.
Was the car data, the tracker data, the only evidence that you had with them out there? But you also had the text messages. Was there anything else that showed that they were out there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. When did SLED get involved in this case? When it became a missing persons case?
No, sir. It would have been a few days later. I want to say it was roughly the 14th of September when Mr. Heron told us about the trackers being on the vehicles.
Okay. And you mentioned the Ring doorbell cameras, and I apologize if you've already went over it, but can you tell the court what the Ring doorbell cameras captured the night of the incident?
I'm not positive of the exact dates right now, but at various times, Kendall Mims is seen carrying gas cans, which would have been stored behind the pool house. I believe they were blue gas cans. And SLED was able to determine that an accelerant was used at the burn site. And at some point, as I said earlier, it wasn't just a burn site. There were cut trees that were placed over the burn site. And Mr. Heron has a battery-operated saw, which you can see on the camera, was taken from under the carport and brought back.
Okay. I'm going to jump back to the bucket. Would the bucket with the remains in it, bucket already at Mr. Heron's home, or was it purchased at some point, or are you aware of that?
They had purchased a bucket at Lowe's as well as a 50-pound bag.
He waived this hearing. I don't know why. It's a probable cause hearing. He doesn't have to be there. They have enough evidence to try him. So I guess he just doesn't have to. I don't know if they're doing it separately without him there, or if this is his too. I don't understand that part. But I mean, obviously he's not been allowed to have bond, and they don't have bond, and this is going forward, and he's the one that actually did it. They're just getting charged with this accessory, and there's two other charges which I don't remember what they are, but I mean we'll hear them in this because this is a probable cause. All I know is that he waived his right to have this hearing, so I'm not exactly sure what that means. I don't know if that means he just doesn't want to be here for this, or if he doesn't even have to have this hearing. I mean, it could be him just saying, okay, you don't have to go through the probable cause because I know you have enough cause. That's probably what it means. I really should take some law classes or something.
I don't think it was quick read, but that type of product. And then ultimately, remains were put in a different bucket, not what they proposed. All three were at the most.
And in their interviews, did three parties know what was in that bucket once y'all discovered it?
Yes, sir. We would not have known about the bucket had they not told us the bucket was there, because the bucket, we had to obtain a separate search warrant following the interviews, and the bucket was away from where the pool house was. It was in a kind of hidden under some not debris, but some overgrowth that was there at the property.
Okay. I just have a few more questions for you. Between the time of the death and the time of their arrest, you mentioned that the defendants went down to, did you say Georgia?
Yes, sir.
Did they go anywhere else in that window of time between August 1st and when they were arrested, I believe October 1st or so?
Yes, sir. I want to say it was around September 14th, 15th. Mr. Heron had called me and said that wanted to let me know that they were up in Tennessee. And he had this information via the tracker, which he had already given permission to us, both verbally and in writing, to use his login information. Following his phone call, I did log in and saw that they had made a trip from Pendleton up to Tennessee, and then ultimately they drove west across Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, ultimately staying in Colorado. Mr. Aaron said because Mr. Aaron is co-owner of a banking account with Ms. Mims. He said that he could see that they had a room booked in Colorado for 2 days. They checked out after the first day and then came back to Pendleton.
And why'd they go out there? A vacation or?
What they said was they went to Tennessee for vacation. Why they went further, ultimately they told us it was due to the pressure they were receiving via social media and our questioning.
Was there any video at the burn site?
Yes, sir. So following the information that they had gone west, we had already located the burn site. And when we saw that they were returning and getting fairly close to South Carolina, SLED put a trail camera out at the recovery site. And upon their return to Pendleton, one of the first things they did was went out to the burn site, and on the trail camera, you can see with the tracker information, the vehicle goes to the burn site. They get out, they walk right to the burn site, and where their images are captured, looking at where the burn site had been.
Okay, I have 2 or 3 more questions. Was there any blood at the scene of the murder that you know of?
The initial search and then following search didn't indicate anything with the various means that SLED forensics used, but during the interview, Victoria had stated that she and Brandon had gone to Food Line to purchase bleach, and there were 2 other products, I can't recall off the top of my head, but they had obtained those because following the strangling, that some type of fluid had come out of Jessica's mouth, so they used that. They made these purchases to clean up that small spot.
And that was Victoria and Brandon.
Yes, sir.
And you've already testified to it a little bit, but y'all spoke to the 3 defendants multiple times between the time of the murder and the time they were arrested, correct?
Yes.
And were they truthful with y'all throughout that time?
No.
They were not true.
No.
And they never told you what actually happened.
Who does that lawyer keep looking at? That blonde lawyer, that's the touchy-feely lawyer that was giving me the creeps in the bond hearing. I don't know. Who does she keep looking at, though? Is she looking over at the prosecutor? She's just, I don't know. She gives me the creeps. She just does.
Till the interviews right before they were arrested.
October 1st, yes, sir.
While Miss Barnes was missing, did the defendants do anything in the community to sort of look like they were looking for her? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir. One evening, I was transferred a phone call from Brandon Barnes where he was asking if he could get the missing person flyer that the town had created, and he was told that he could print it off the town website. He also, the 3 of them, Brandon, Victoria, and Kendall, at some point met with a reporter in the downtown square area. Brandon was apparently carrying the remains of his deceased child. And he spoke with the reporter, indicating that they were attempting to search for Jessica.
did Brandon ask y'all for flyers for her missing persons case? Was that after the ultimate date of that Miss Barnes had died?
Well,
Okay. And did Miss Tippett or Miss Mims have any activity in regards to putting out missing persons flyers?
I don't know that they put out any flyers, but they were with him when they met with the reporter.
And that was when he was putting out flyers, is that correct?
I don't know that they put out flyers.
Okay,
He was told that he could print them off. I don't know if he did or not.
okay. But, so why did they met with the reporter to talk about her being missing? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, and all three of them were there.
Jennifer, I think they're all 20. If they're not 20, they're right around it. They're babies.
At that time, speaking with the reporter. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to inform the court of related to these warrants?
No, sir.
I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, everybody. Please support. Thank you for being here today, Officer Westcott. You said earlier in your testimony that the missing persons report was filed by Ms. Rivera on September 10th. Okay, and there was nothing from anyone else before that date?
Yes, ma'am.
There was, okay.
No, there was nothing.
Okay, sorry. So September 10th, and you said the first thing y'all did was you went to 102 Laurel Drive,
Yes, ma'am.
and you spoke to all three parties?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, were you there personally, or did you watch any of the interviews?
I was there.
And did you speak to them alone, or were they together?
When we initially made contact, all three of them were inside the residence. Eventually, Officer Middlecom in Victoria asked her to step outside with her to speak with them, with her, while myself, Officer Bishop, were speaking with Ms. Mims and Brandon Hart inside the residence.
Okay, so Ms. Mims was inside of Mr. Barnes' home?
Correct.
Thank you. Now, when you got word about the missing persons case, and after you went out and spoke to the parties, did you have an opportunity to run like a background check on these individuals?
At that point, there was no need. All we had was a missing persons case.
And do you know whether or not police ever went to this scene 102 Laurel Drive before the September 17th?
I was there.
For what reasons?
I was there in 2023. I don't remember the exact date. I think it was October. There was a report where Officer Carpenter was investigating an incident. I don't recall the exact incident. But I went there to make contact while he was out on Jackson Street talking to, I believe it was Ms. Laura, I'm not positive who he was talking to. I never went to Jackson Street in 2023 on that incident. But he asked me to go to the war where I made contact, on my body cam. You can see Brandon Barnes, Jessica Barnes, Jessica Barbara at the time, and Kendall Mims were there.
Okay. And were you aware of Ms. Barnes' stillborn baby?
During the course of the investigation, we became aware of it, yes.
Okay. And at what point in time did you learn about prior domestic violence incidences that had occurred at that residence?
We never had any reports of domestic violence incidents at the residence.
Okay. But when you looked up information about Mr. Barnes, at whatever point that you did you find that there were hints and instances that looked like domestic violence had occurred?
Not with these parties. We did learn that he had been arrested for domestic violence in the state of Maine.
And that he also had a juvenile record or something along those lines as well?
Yes.
Okay, so you said that during this investigation, you did become aware of the stillborn.
Yes, ma'am.
And were you privy to those medical records?
During the course of the investigation, we learned Anderson County Sheriff's Office had investigated that incident, had made a report on it. We do have their report.
Okay, because in the medical records, as well as the deputy, Officer Free State who responded, said they noticed bruising all over Mrs. Barnes' body, and Officer Free State mentioned it as well. I think at least one other officer had went out and noticed Ms. Barnes' black eyes. Were you aware of that during your investigation?
We never had a report of a domestic violence incident.
Okay. So, at any point in time, did you attempt to triangulate the funds between these individuals?
We ultimately, through the investigation, had search warrants, got all their phones, did the phone bills. We have all the full information.
Okay, so you did do.
Triangulation, no, that was not part of it.
Okay, is that not something that's done when there's a missing persons report?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Now, you said that there were forensics of the funds,
Yes, ma'am.
and did you get a warrant for those forensics?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you got it yourself or someone else did?
Multiple officers were working on it. I believe the phone dump warrants were obtained by Officer Kendall.
Okay. Now, at any point in time, did you attempt to speak to the victim who had her name?
She called. Yes, ma'am.
She did call.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you speak to her?
Yeah, at some point, let me back that up. I don't know that I spoke to her. I believe Officer Bill spoke to her.
And did she express concerns about strangulation?
As far as I know of, yes.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to ever question Ms. Mims by herself?
During the course of the investigation, we spoke with all of them multiple times.
But did you ever have an opportunity to speak to her by herself?
They were always together.
And where was the minor trial when this was occurring?
You talking about the murder?
No. I know where she was. Where was the minor trial when you were questioning Ms. Mims?
Which time?
Any of the times?
I believe she was typically in the care of Mr. Herring.
Okay. All right, so, but you said that you did end up, when you said that they were together, are you meaning Mr. Barnes and Ms. Mims were together? He was there, or did you mean somebody else's Ms. Mims?
Typically, it was always Ms. Tippett, Ms. Mims, Mr. Barnes.
Okay.
He was a very controlling individual.
Now, I know you said you had an opportunity to speak to her grandfather, Mr. Herring, on
Yes.
several occasions, and he was really helpful solving the case. Did you by chance get a search warrant for the GPS trackers at any point in time?
I believe Sled had taken one of those. Yes. I believe.
Okay.
Or if not the warrant, Mr. Herring had given us permission. Both were believed in that state.
And you stated earlier that Mr. Herring is not on Mr. Barnes' title, but he is.
He's on the HHR, registered to Mr. Barnes, and on the Kia, which I believe is registered to Mr. Herring with Ms. Mims as well.
I see where she's going, and he kind of just confirmed it. If Brandon was there every time the girls were questioned and he's really controlling, he could have forced them to do this. You do this, you help me, or you're going to end up just like her. So I can see them doing this out of fear. So, I mean, I need to see a lot more evidence to make sure, but that's a possibility. And I think that's where her attorney is possibly going with the questions that she's asking.
Did you have an opportunity to review the ring camera?
I did not review the ring cameras that Sled.
based upon their report about what occurred on the road cameras, you made decisions about the case? Okay. Now, how many times have you worked with domestic violence victims or responded to domestic violence calls?
Over the course of 16 years, I can't give you a number.
Right.
Many times.
And so I am going to assume, and I would like for you to correct me if I'm wrong, that you've gotten some domestic violence training.
Yes, ma'am.
And were you concerned at all about domestic violence events at any point in time?
No, like again, as I said, we have never received a call to the Laurel Drive address for an incident. I believe it was 4 calls roughly to the Jackson Street address where Mr. Barnes' mother resided. And Miss Barnes, Jessica Guevara at the time, had resided there.
But during the course of your investigation, you discovered probably some pretty alarming information. Did you start to wonder if there was any domestic violence present?
Yeah. They should be held accountable, but not for the actual murder. But then there's extenuating circumstances. They did it out of fear. But yeah, they probably are still in love with him. Yeah. They're too young. They're all too young. When you're this young, I mean, I'm old now, so I can say this. When you're that young and you're in love, you think that's the end of the world. Like, you're never going to fall in love with anybody again. This is a person that you have to spend the rest of your life with. I don't understand polygamy. I don't get it. Like, if someone loves you, says they love you, and they want to be with other women too, no, that's not love. No. I don't understand that. Some people roll that way, whatever, but that's no. If you love me, you love only me. I'm sorry. Absolutely not.
I wanted to Laurel Drive,
With which parties? You're talking 3
all of
different
them,
females.
any of them?
We never had any indication that there was domestic violence. At some point, Ms. Guevara, Cecilia Guevara, Jessica's mother, told us about an incident in November, probably 23, where she said that she believed Jessica had been the victim of domestic violence, but it had been a call that had been handled by the sheriff's office. So Pendleton Police Department, as I said, had never received a report of domestic violence.
Now, that's interesting. So I know that police did respond because of domestic violence at 102 Laurel. Is there a reason why Pendleton wasn't notified of it?
It would depend on the day that it would have been reported. Pendleton Police Department, after 2 a.m. Saturday morning until 8 a.m. Monday morning, Pendleton Police Department is off duty. So if it occurs Saturday, Sunday, into Monday morning, it's Anderson County Sheriff's Office's response.
Okay. But you said that you went to Ms. Guevara's residence and that you had to take Mrs. Barnes, Jessica, to a hospital?
We didn't take her, the ambulance took her to the hospital.
And that was July 31st?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you find out any information more about that during the course of your investigation? Because obviously she was in the hospital and you assumed that the date of the murder was either the 1st or the 2nd?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how she got from the hospital to back to 102 Laurel?
For the statements we received, Jessica Barnes had her phone while she was being transported via ambulance to admin. She was in contact with Brandon Barnes via text message. Once she was brought into the emergency room for mental health evaluation at admin, she ultimately decided to check herself out. Left the hospital, was apparently walking around Anderson, still communication with Brandon via phone. And he ultimately, on the morning of the 1st, drove to Anderson to pick her up and brought her back to him. I couldn't never handle
Okay. Did that show?
I can't answer that.
Okay. What about, were you ever aware that Mr. Barnes would drive Ms. Mims' car
Yes, ma'am.
without her in it?
I couldn't tell you if she would have been in it or not.
Okay, but maybe that would also be something that's on the camera? At any point in time during this investigation, did you speak to Mrs. Mims, excuse me, Mrs. Mims' family members, her mom or dad?
No, ma'am.
So you're not aware, excuse me, that they had sought law enforcement services in North Carolina and Georgia trying to find their daughter?
Unaware of North Carolina, Georgia, yes, that was one of the indications, or that was one of the reasons that Mr. Heron said he put a tracker on the vehicle that she typically drove, was that Brandon Barnes, and Kendall Mims at some point had gone down to Georgia, unknown where, family didn't have any contact with her. So when they came back, he had put the tracker on the vehicle so that that type of activity wouldn't happen again.
In fact, the family had to report the car stolen so that they could find her, correct?
I couldn't tell you if the car was reported stolen.
Okay, so do you have any of those incident reports?
No, ma'am, not reported to Pendleton PD.
So, you stated that there were several text messages that you saw on the phones, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And did Ms. Barbara make you aware that she suspected that Mr. Barnes had been texting her using Jessica's phone?
Are we talking about when she reported her as a missing person?
Yes.
Yes, so she said that the reason she was in to report her as a missing person was that she had not heard from Jessica on her birthday. And that, I don't remember the exact date, but she had gotten a text message allegedly from Jessica's phone, but she did not believe that it was sent from Jessica. Reading the text message, it read very strange. It was a long run-on sentence. And she also said that one of her sons had received a similar text message. Went to her residence, made contact with one of her minor sons, read the text message he had received, and it was very similar to the text message that Ms. Villar had received, other than the message he received had some punctuation in it, and the other indication from Ms. Villar was that Jessica typically used a number of emojis. Hers was long run-on sentence, no emojis, and her son had some punctuation and emojis, but it read very similarly.
At any point in time, did you find out that Mr. Barnes regularly used Ms. Mims and Ms. Barnes' phones?
And he apparently used all three of their phones as well as his.
And were you aware that he also did some of that with their social media?
Yes, ma'am.
At any point in time, did you realize that, when you were saying that Ms. Tippett and Mr. Barnes went to Walmart to buy the plastic container to shovel in the Coca-Cola, you stated that they used Ms. Mims' debit card, correct? She was not there, correct?
She was not there when that purchase was made.
And that appeared to have taken place while she was at work,
Correct. Yes, she was not there.
prior to her learning about any of this. As far as you can tell, that was prior to her learning about any of this.
I don't know when she learned of the event.
All right.
Would have been after she returned home, but I can't tell you how long after she returned home that she sold.
At any point in time, did you notice that Mr. Barnes was funneling large amounts of money from Ms. Mims' account to his own?
What we found through the bank records was it seemed like as Ms. Mims would get paid, transfers were made from her account into Brandon Barr's account.
Was he doing that with anyone else?
Jessica Barnes had very little money, and we didn't see any indication that there was anything from Victoria Tippett.
Okay. And do you know how many jobs Ms. Mims was forced to work?
I believe she was working 2 jobs, at an Arby's, and then she had just started a job at a diner or some type of eating establishment on Clemson University.
And were you aware that at least one of her coworkers made a statement regarding injuries that she constantly saw on Ms. Mims?
Yes, one of the coworkers said that she had seen some type of injury on her body.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn that Mr. Barnes required Ms. Mims to either wear a headset or keep her phone on all the time so that he could listen to everything she did?
From the statements they've given me, while all of them, while Brandon was at work, he would be constantly on the phone with the parties, and Ms. Mims, while she was at work, she was apparently on the phone as well.
You stated earlier in your testimony that Ms. Mims rarely said much at all,
Different, very differential.
and that was your experience with her as a whole.
Throughout the investigation, yes. Only time I ever really saw any type of emotion from her was in October 2023, when I had made contact with her, Jessica Brevard at the time, and Brandon Barnes.
All right, now, do you know who had the relationship first with Mr. Barnes, where this began?
Ms. Mims.
And do you know where that occurred? It's where it started.
No.
So, do you know when Ms. Barnes was introduced into this equation?
Toward the end of 2023.
Okay. And then, are you aware of when Ms. Tippett became involved?
July, like a couple of weeks before this happened.
All right.
Ms. Wise, I just want to make sure, are you handling both cases?
No.
I'll be quick, Your Honor.
Well, when she mentioned, Ms. Tippett, I just wanted to make sure that y'all were, you were handling both cases while, I wanted to stay as close to the charges as possible. I know I'm allowed to go far afield, and I'm allowed to solicit officer, and I don't know that you're not, calling another buy-in.
This is our only witness, Your Honor.
So I just wanted to make sure, just wanted to make sure.
Thank you, Judge, I appreciate that. All right, so you did say that all 3 of the parties were at Lowe's, correct?
Yes, sir.
And,
Seeing those surveillance.
all right, do you know who drove that day?
No, I did not.
So, you stated that Ms. Mims was not there during the commission of this crime.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that during her interview, she gave you information that she knew what had happened?
During her interview, I was not present during the interview. I watched the interview recording. She ultimately initially stated that Jessica had left of her own volition. Nobody knew where she was, and then eventually.
What she had been told was that Jessica committed suicide.
Yes, sir.
And she said that numerous times.
Yes, sir.
So, Miss Mims never said that.
Yeah, because she wasn't there. She said, again, she was telling us what she was told. She had disappeared, she had killed herself.
And did you ever uncover any evidence that Miss Mims was married to Brandon Barnes?
No, Mr. Barnes and Ms. Mims had obtained a wedding license, but had never.
Because just getting a marriage license isn't enough to get married in the state of South Carolina.
That they never have gotten married.
Did you ever uncover any information that the child that Miss Mims had with Mr. Barnes was a secret of any kind?
Not that we're aware of. No.
And were you ever able to uncover any kind of plot to kill Miss Barnes?
No.
Did you ever find anything regarding Miss Mims that she wanted to do this, thought about doing this, made a plan to do this?
There's never, nothing during the investigation showed that there was a plan to kill her. We found numerous text messages amongst the parties that Miss didn't know about that.
There's that squarely in Mr. Barnes. I have no further questions.
Hey, please support, Your Honor. Just want to clear up one thing. At the beginning of your testimony, were you at the incident, the civil disturbance incident on July 31st?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You guys remember Law and Order SVU way back at the beginning? Do you remember the blonde DA that had glasses? Alex Cabot. That is who that attorney reminds me of. As much as her mannerisms put me off, she still reminds me of Alex. Just the blonde hair and the glasses, the way she looks. But she still, her mannerism, she creeps me out.
So I showed up. Mrs. Barnes, Jessica Barnes, was laying in the street, all her belongings with her, and it was at the residence next to her mother's address at 456 Jackson. At that time, both Brandon Barnes and Jessica Barnes were placed on trespass notice from 456 Jackson, where the mother and her other siblings resided. Brandon Barnes was present while we were dealing with that, and then ultimately waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Ms. Mims had arrived on scene. She stayed separated from where we were dealing with Jessica and Brandon.
Was that like a shouting match? Were they going at each other? What kind of, when you say civil disturbance, I'm just trying to get an idea of what was actually going on.
Apparently, Brandon had brought Jessica back to the residence with all her belongings, where he was leaving her, and his intention initially was leaving. While we were on scene and it was, he wanted to bring her with him. She had made indications that she wanted to, Jessica had made indications that she wanted to hurt herself, which is when we asked for the ambulance to come on scene.
Was that incident recorded on body cam?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was that turned over as part of this whole case file?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go then now to the initial contact you had with Brandon, Victoria, and Kendall, where Victoria made the written statement. Was all of that on body cam and recorded?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and turned over to the solicitor's office?
Yes, sir.
All right, the GPS trackers on the cars. Now, when you initially answered the state's question, you said that Brandon Barnes was the registered owner of the HHR, and that then later during the cross, you said Brandon Barnes and Mr. Herron. And I'm just trying to make sure I get this right. Was he actually a registered owner? A co-signer on the loan?
Give me just a second.
No problem.
I believe I have this.
That is a good question, Britta, and I don't know the answer to that one. The bond hearing was separate because I only saw Kendall's bond hearing, and that was separate. I don't know what that indicates. Like, I don't know, because the probable cause hearing is together, but the bond hearings were separate. I don't know what that means. Like I said, I need to take some type of law classes. I have no idea. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Um, and also, I thought this was going to be when I started covering it, I didn't think we were going to get to follow through on it. I just was in shock when I heard the story of this case. So hopefully we'll get to see the whole thing all the way through to trial.
Mr. Heron was a co-signer.
Okay, if I told you that, looking at the tax records, that Brandon Barnes is the only listed person for the HHR, but that Mr. Heron and then Ms. Mims are on the registration for the Kia Forte, would that surprise you?
No,
Okay, and so were you able to, if Mr. Heron was on some sort of note, were you able to collect that note to verify that Mr. Heron had some sort of interest in the HHR?
I don't recall if we got that.
Okay, because, you would agree that probably can't put trackers into random people's cars.
Correct.
Okay. Did you, what kind of GPS trackers were they? Were they like air tags? Were they a magnetic device?
He didn't answer that question.
Okay.
And it wasn't on question. I
It's
didn't,
clear that the HHR and the Forte to some extent were used in furtherance of this investigation. Were those devices collected and put into evidence?
negative.
Why not?
They were owned by Mr. Heron.
All right. Just to get to some statements that I read, I believe in your interview with Mr. Heron, he described Brandon at one point as manipulative and narcissistic with women.
And if his lips are moving, he's lying.
And if his lips are moving, he's lying. Also, in an interview with Jessica's mother, talked about Jessica being physically abused by Brandon and then provided a picture, which I believe is actually an evidence that I've seen,
Yes.
of a black eye. You're interviewing Julia Palmer, who dated Brandon between August and November of 2023. Believe she stated that Brandon put a cigarette on her before they broke up.
That was a phone interview. And she had said that she had been involved in for a short period of time, 2 or 3 months. And at some point, he had put out a cigarette on one of her legs, asked her if she ever reported the incident. She said no.
Now,
How far are we going to go back into?
I'm done with that.
In time?
this is as far back, my last question as far as that, and I've only got a few more, Your Honor. In your testimony, at the beginning, you said that you got to the Twin Lakes location based off the phone data or the tracker data.
Yes, sir.
In your report, there's a stated that a confidential source had said that Brandon was at Twin Lakes on August the 3rd. Was there a confidential source?
Mr. Henry.
Mr. Herring. Okay, that clears that up. Just because it can be a little bit confusing at times. Well, let me ask this first. You said that a private entity was used as, do you remember what entity that was?
No, it's not okay, sir.
Okay. And were they paid by the department? Were they paid by SLED? Do you have any of that information?
Volunteer.
And
All I said was this is a probable cause hearing. Y'all don't need to go so far back. You can do that at trial.
you said that the remains were identified by dental ID, based off the 3 teeth that were found.
The 3 teeth and a piece of the jaw.
Do you know who did that ID?
It's in the report.
Okay.
I saw the name last off the top of my head.
Was there any sort of DNA identification?
Ultimately, SLED did the DNA, yes, sir.
What actual, and you may not know every little piece, but what actual remains were collected from that burn site other than the piece of the jawbone with the teeth?
I can't answer that. While that search was being conducted out at Twin Lakes, myself and Officer Bishop were doing a search over at Lower Drive, so it was being conducted simultaneously.
Were any large remains found, larger bone?
Not that I'm aware of.
Now, during one of the interviews, I believe, maybe Ms. Tippett had said that they purchased bleach, clean up bodily fluids.
Yes, sir.
It's my understanding that the pool house was carpeted.
Yes, sir.
Was there any evidence of any bleach being used, any bleached out areas?
Not when you SLED forensics, usually luminol and whatever else they use.
Okay, so to your knowledge, there was no areas of carpet like it looked like someone poured bleach on?
No, sir.
Part of your report mentions that you had received a tip on September 19th, regarding a potential sighting of Jessica Barnes at the Dollar General. Was that ever reviewed, or was video ever pulled from that Dollar General at that point in time?
No, sir. I conducted that interview on the phone, and when I asked the gentleman if he would, how certain he was, he said, yeah, I don't remember the percentage he gave, and I said, well, would it change your mind any if I told you that we had evidence that would indicate that you did not see what you believe you saw? And he said, no, he was pretty sure that he'd seen Miss Barnes.
Okay. And that would have been before 9/20, I'm sorry, that would have been before Ms. Barnes would have been identified though.
Possibly identified, yes, sir.
Did you ever get that individual's name?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so his information is in a report?
Is in the report, yes, sir.
Okay. What about the identification of a woman, I believe she's described as looking haggard and smoking a Marlboro cigarette, that was seen on September 20th? And who said that she collected, I believe, 3 trash bags worth of stuff from the area?
Right.
Was she ever identified?
No, sir. Again, on the 20th, this was information that was reported to me. I put it in the report. Information I received was that a SLED agent was stopped by this woman that she was driving by and said that she had found a number of trash bags at some location.
Okay, but there was no idea what was in the trash bags, whether they were trash, whether they were potential evidence, whether they were
No, sir.
remains.
And she was never identified.
And then my last question would be, do you remember Ms. Mims giving a statement to police that basically said that Brandon had told Ms. Mims and Ms. Tippett if they had told police or said anything about this, that basically they were all going down with it?
That was their statement, yes, sir.
What's moment for one quick second, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness.
I have two or three follow-ups, if you allow. Officer Westcott, in Ms. Wise's questioning, she was a little bit unsure on the date of the actual murder and when it took place. So I have some stuff that I've gathered from the report and in my discussions with law enforcement. The civil disturbance happened on 10/31, correct?
Correct.
And then
On Jackson Street.
Then at some point early on 8/1, that's when Miss Barnes is wandering around downtown Anderson area.
Yes, sir.
And on 8/1, Mr. Barnes picks her up, correct? So,
In the morning.
okay. And 8/1 passes by and there's, in my review of the evidence, there's the HHR or the Kia, one of the two is door dashing late at night on 8/1. Does that sound correct to you, if you
Yes.
know of that? Okay. And then we go into 8/2 and Kendall leaves for work. And let me take one step back. On 8/1, we've got Jessica on Ring doorbell camera and Brandon returning back to the pool house.
Yes, sir.
And then on 8/2, Kendall leaves for work and Jessica is alive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You said it sounds correct. Are you not 100% sure? Okay. And then, so Kendall goes to work on 8/2 and she's alive. Kendall returns on 8/2 and that's when she sees Jessica's body in the plastic bin, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it seems as though she was murdered sometime between when Kendall left for work, the morning of the 2nd, and she comes home from work after, 5 o'clock on the 2nd.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, next thing too is also in Ms. Wise's questioning is she talked about how Kendall never actually said that she knew that Brandon choked Jessica to death. That's what the questioning was, correct?
Yes, sir.
But in her interview, she ultimately admitted to Brandon what happened. Kendall, in her interview, finally, after telling her that was exactly true, Kendall said Brandon.
He was trying to do some type of WWE move where his arm had come around her neck. And that's how she had been choked, strangled.
And that's what Kendall told the law enforcement in her.
Correct.
So she ultimately told you any sort of like, is she making any demonstrations of what Brandon told her that you know of?
Kendall did not. Victoria did.
Victoria did, okay. All right, and let me go to, you said you did not collect, this is now Mr. Boyle's question. You did not collect the physical trackers?
Correct.
Mr. Harron either still has them or something along those lines?
As far as I know.
Okay, but did y'all extract and review the data from those trackers?
Yes, sir. SLED got that data.
And y'all have that data?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the ultimate data that shows you where the remains were?
Yes, sir.
And who, I think you testified to, just to make sure, who positively identified the remains? Because there weren't many remains. Who positively identified them?
Give me a second. I don't have it right here. It was an email, whomever the remains were sent to identify an email, the Anderson County coroner once the coroner, or it might have been Pickens County coroner, Camden County, once they had the email, that was when the plan was made to pick the three up for the interview, now that we had positively identified the woman as Jessica Barnes.
And I don't know the name either, just sitting here, but wasn't it someone at Clemson University that had to look at the remains just due to the state they were in?
Professor Weisensee,
The the one sitting by the blonde attorney, that's Kendall. She's the mother of the minor child. She was the first girlfriend. The wife is the one that is dead. The one by the male attorney is Victoria, and she is the girlfriend that was supposed to be just a roommate as far as Jessica knew. Jessica was the wife. When Jessica met Brandon told her that Kendall was his sister and the baby was his niece. And they got married. Kendall and Brandon had gone to the courthouse and got a marriage certificate before he even met Jessica, but they never got married. Yeah. So they had a marriage certificate that they never, or license that they never acted on, and had a baby. Then he met Jessica, married her. She moved in with them. She thought that was his sister and that the baby was his niece. Kendall's grandfather also lived with them. And then they moved in Victoria as a roommate. I know. He's not like Brad Pitt or anything. Like, I don't understand. And then she finally finds out that that's his kid and his baby mama. And I don't know if he told her or if she found out. And then she walks in on him in the middle of relations with Victoria. And that's when they get called to what they're describing as a civil disturbance. And then a few days later, her mother's reporting her as a missing person.
who would come onto the scene initially, I positively identified human remains on the 20th of September. I'm sorry, 19th of September, the initial search. The ultimate positive identification of the dental remains, that was sent to someone who was in Georgia.
Okay.
I believe it's Georgia.
But those dental remains were Jessica's, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then this is my last question. Mr. Bloom was talking about the bleach and the bleach being purchased, and there not really being much evidence of bleach. But my understanding is that in Kendall Mims' interview, she told law enforcement that when she came back to the house, it smelled like the room had been bombed with bleach. Does
Yes.
that sound correct to you?
Yes, sir.
And
that.
that Brandon said that he had bombed the room for bugs.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Brief redirect, Your Honor.
I'm sorry.
I said a brief redirect, Your Honor.
Okay.
So, sorry. During this interview,
Bug bombs do not smell like bleach.
she also said that it smelled very strongly of like ant killer or bleach. Do you remember her saying that exactly?
Yes, ma'am.
So it could have been one. She wasn't exactly sure.
Yes, ma'am.
And last question. During Ms. Mims' interview, she did state that Mr. Barnes had tried to restrain Mrs. Barnes.
Yes, ma'am.
But she stated over and over and over again that Mrs. Barnes was still moving when Mr. Barnes left the room. Or is that incorrect?
That, I'm not sure, again, I wasn't present during her interview, and she wasn't present during the
She was at work. How does she know?
incident.
Okay. All right, thank you. No further questions?
No.
One question, why did you get the accessory after the fact and mispresent of a felony? Aren't they the same elements, except one is murder, A, B, C, and the other one is just felony?
Honestly, Your Honor, I had never heard of this prison. SLED spoke with the solicitor. Solicitor said, go forward with these charges.
Is that what y'all want to do? Y'all going,
Judge, it's my understanding that we are aware of the accessory and the misprision issue, and that there's a possibility there's some case law saying you cannot be guilty of those two. That's not representation to you right
you
now.
would have to elect the charge.
I believe that's correct.
The solicitor, you can say,
And my also our understanding is that the jury could pick between the two at a trial, and that it can't be both. So.
Yeah, Judge, if we ultimately go to trial on this case, you have to look at it in a vacuum, and of course it'll all depend on the testimony that comes out and ultimately what the jury decides. But you can, the circuit court can structure the jury instructions so that they, if they pick one, or if they don't pick one, they move on to the next one and vice versa.
both have to be indicted no matter what.
Yes,
So I know it's a preliminary hearing, but
and that's way on down the line.
yeah, that's way down the line, but I'm just not sure why. Saying one is common law and one is codified, as far as I consider.
I would say that the accessory part is more of an active role, and the misprision of a felony is more of a neglect of duty aspect of it. So I think the defense would make some arguments.
You can have a felony without being an ABC felony. There is a lesser felony, but that's not including the accessory. These may be semantical arguments anyway. Anything about on the lines?
Just briefly, Your Honor, the only evidence they have of Ms. Mims knowing about this murder occurring was based upon her own testimony in her interview that she gave willingly and voluntarily misled to law enforcement. However, at no point in time during her interview did she state that she actually knew that Brandon Barnes killed Jessica Barnes. And her statement over and over and over again was that as far as she knew, Mrs. Barnes was still alive, even after Brandon tried to subdue her. Based upon that, I would ask to consider dismissing the accessory after the fact of murder, because the only evidence they have that she knew that it was a murder was based upon what she said, that she knew that he restrained her, that she did testify or state over and over again that Mrs. Barnes was still alive once the restraining was over with. And Judge, to be guilty of accessory after the fact of murder, she'd have to know that there was a murder that occurred.
Nothing.
And Judge, I would just respond to the motion related to accessory is that I would agree that you have to acknowledge that a felony has occurred. When you come home from work and there's a deceased person inside of a plastic tote, and then you tell law enforcement that that person who committed the murder ultimately demonstrated for you how they choked them, and you demonstrate that choke for law enforcement, and then a murder charge is ultimately brought, that it just sort of defies logic that you don't know that a felony has occurred and then a murder has occurred, Your Honor.
I do find probable cause on all three charges for both defendants. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, good. I was afraid we were gonna run over and I was gonna miss Biggin tonight. Okay, what are the three charges? Accessory abuse. Did they say abuse of a corpse? I thought for sure they would actually say the three charges. I know. That's what I was thinking in the very beginning when she kept staring at him. I'm like, she's got the hots for this guy. She has to. She can't keep her eyes off of him. Um, I am so sorry that I don't have every little detail. Like I said, I saw this like, yes, they did. They found probable cause. It is going to trial. When I saw this a couple months ago, I was like, oh my God. And I just sat down and I was watching it myself. And this woman, it was just Kendall Mims' bond hearing. And that lady, this is why she creeps. She may not have creeped you guys out, but go back and watch that other hearing. She was constantly touching her and rubbing her back and hugging her, and it was just creepy. She was so touchy feely. And I was just, when I read about the situation, I was just like, this is the most rednecky. I'm a proud country girl, but I was like, I have to watch this with my friends. I cannot just sit here and watch. I've got to share this. And it was one of those core TV programs where it's got the talking heads and the commentator, and they're talking back and forth, and they're showing a clip of it here and a clip of it there. And so I was like fast forwarding through the people talking, and yeah, exactly, trailer park crap. And so it wasn't the whole hearing, and it was choppy in bits and pieces, and I didn't think we would, we'd ever get to see like a whole uncut hearing or the trial or anything. I thought this was going to be like a one and done, but I just wanted to show it because I was so appalled. I was like, these are kids. These are kids having kids. Exactly. I'm a redneck. I'm a proud redneck. These are kids having kids, and then thinking that being adult means that they can do whatever they want. And it was just so appalling. I was like, no, I have to share this one. I'm sorry. And I didn't know we were gonna be able to keep watching it, and so I didn't do any research on it or anything like that. But I will try to see what I can find out. So yeah, this one's a head scratcher, man. How do you stay with someone like that just keeps? Now I'm talking about Kendall. She has his child. How do you just keep letting your man bring home more women? I don't understand. I don't understand. Yeah, and the thing with, and I get, yes, he's a abusive, manipulative, controlling, but don't get into him burning his ex-girlfriends with cigarettes at the probable cause hearing. Save that for trial. We can prove that he's abusive at trial. Today is not that day. So, okay. Well, he's not live yet. I was going to say I would shuffle us over to Biggin, but I don't have that ability yet because I'm not official yet. So, they don't let me do that. Maybe soon though, although he's not live yet for another 20 minutes. Yeah, see y'all at Biggins. So thank you guys for coming out. This has been so much fun. I'm having like real live streams now with more than 2 people. Thank you guys. I appreciate you. And this is how I end my recorded videos. Remember, be kind to people, love your family, and Jesus loves you, and so do I. And I will see you guys later. Bye.